once. Corey Brad is here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Of course, that is your destination for Iowa athletics, football, baseball, basketball, men's and women's. Corey, how are you?
Good. Iowa's been riding a nice recruiting surge over the past month or two. And I think a week ago at this time, we said, well, the biggest need left for Iowa is DB in the 24 class. And they've landed 2 DBs in the past 7 days. So never count Phil Parker out. You just never worry about that position. I don't know how many times I've said that on this show. But Jaylen Watson, Rashad Godfrey, a couple of guys that have been added since our last live show. And I know Jaylen Watson, really good high school wide receiver. You just trust Phil Parker to identify talent. And again, you see the crop of schools that Iowa battled out for both of these guys, and it's pretty typical. The Louisvilles, the Cincinnatis, the Minnesotas of the world, West Virginia. That's a kind of a short list of Jaylen Watson's offers. And then as far as Godfrey's concerned, Duke, Boston College, and then a bunch of group of fives, FCS schools. So that class is getting pretty much in place, Mark. I mean, you're just going to be filling holes from here on out. And obviously the portals become more and more of a factor with recruiting. So it's things are going to change, and guys can opt out. Guys can decommit between now and December. I think last year we had 1 decommit in David Kalker. So that's always possible, but Iowa's done a nice job in this class, and it's always good to feel like you can go into fall camp. I would think as a coach, I shouldn't say that. I think as a coach, it would feel pretty good to be able to go into fall camp feeling somewhat content. You're never content, but feeling somewhat content with the class for the next year. Because I mean, there's so much on these coaches' plates, but to be able to focus on this upcoming season once you get to August I think is important. And that, the students are wrapping up their recruitment early anyways, and that's good for Iowa.
Did they not have another decommit flip of significance last recruiting cycle?
We don't talk about that one, Mark.
Oh, okay.
We don't talk about that. That was on, what was that? Was that the day before signing day?
Was it that? Yes, it was that close.
Signing day, yeah. I don't even think about that one because it was so ridiculous. But yeah, Walker, he flipped earlier in the cycle, flipped to Iowa State. So that one, if he had been a more sought after recruit, boy, it's interesting, Mark. You didn't hear anybody really whining about David Kalker flipping to Iowa State. Isn't that interesting? Now I understand people will come up with excuses of why it was different with Caden Proctor. Oh, he was, he waited until the last second. But the bottom line is he's a 5-star recruit that everybody was drooling over. And that's why fans were so upset. Had he been a 2-star recruit that flipped at the last second to Alabama, nobody would have cared. And it was somewhat hypocritical for fans to be upset about that, and yet to welcome guys like Tegan Davis with open arms. And you may say, oh, he's committed to Eastern Illinois. Well, he was committed to Eastern Illinois, and I think a day or two before signing day, he decommitted and flipped to Iowa. So it's kind of the pot calling the kettle black. I believe Caden Proctor's mom quote tweeted my tweet about Tegan Davis shortly before signing day about the hypocrisy behind that. And I'm not taking sides with anybody. I'm just saying the reality is fans are going to act how fans are going to act. Caden Proctor had every right to make that decision. The thing about it is, Mark, looking at the 24 class, there's really nobody left out there that Iowa's in the running for that's going to bring that sort of publicity and pressure in this class. So I think fans will be somewhat relaxed heading into signing day. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with the transfer portal by the time we hit December. But for the most part, I mean, the top recruit in the state is likely headed, it sounds like, to either Nebraska or Kansas State. Iowa's basically wrapped up the rest of the state. And it's a solid year in the state of Iowa, but nothing like Xavier Wampa, Caden Proctor, like we've seen in recent time.
And Proctor's most likely going to start for Alabama this year.
Is that the word on the street?
That good.
Is that the word on the street? He is starting?
The word on the street is that he will start or be a significant backup. Yes, he's impressive and he's fulfilling all the
thank you
hopes and desires.
Thank you for letting me know. I kind of surmised that from some of the scuttlebutt around the spring game, the spring practice, open spring game for Alabama. It sounded like he looked really good.
Yeah.
In the public forum, public eye.
And just to confirm, because every time I see that athlete designation on these recruits, I go to the expert like yourself, because that typically 90% of the time, that means that player is playing wide receiver and defensive back at that level in high school. More often, we're seeing tight end and linebacker being an athlete. But you're saying that he will be a wide receiver at the next level based on everything you gather. Jaylen Watson.
No, he's both these guys are projected as DBs, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Jaylen Watson was a productive. He's a little undersized. He's 5'11", 175. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, both these guys project it at corner. Now, Godfrey's a little bit longer. I think he's, let me see what 247 Sports has him, 6'1", 6'2". 247's got him at 6'2", $185. But Iowa's not been afraid. I mean, Julius Brents, TJ Hall, a couple of examples of longer DBs, longer corners, I should say. So maybe Godfrey ends up playing safety, but I could see him on the outside. So both these guys probably project as corners. And usually once they end up at cornerback, they don't go to wide receiver. Like I've noticed that and I don't know, that'd be a good question for Don Patterson back in the day when he coached. If he saw if there were just more transitions from offense to defense than vice versa, because we've seen we've seen wide receivers switch over to DB if they're not playing. You would think with some of the depth issues in recent time at Iowa, maybe you'd find a cornerback to switch over to offense. Perfect example is, was it Devontae Young, wide receiver who started, I think, first game in 2017 against Josh Allen in Wyoming, and then kind of disappeared the rest of the season, eventually transitioned and became a pretty productive special teams guy in DB. And same could be said for Devin Hilson. He wasn't a wide receiver, but he's a running back. He's now in the defensive back room. So I don't know if I'm a little surprised that they haven't maybe experimented more, but maybe they just don't have the skill set. I've tossed the name AJ Lawson out there. He's a guy who he's on scholarship, but have not heard a peep about AJ Lawson seeing the field anywhere. And he's been on scholarship. What is this, year 3 for AJ Lawson? So like someone like that, like if you're suffering at wide receiver, and maybe Iowa did enough, they feel okay at wide receiver. You hope the injury bug stays away, but that would be the type of guy I look at and say, well, maybe he switches over. So I guess my point is, my guess is Godfrey Watson stay at DB, and we'll see if it's corner or safety.
So Godfrey is playing on the junior college level, correct? Is that what I'm seeing here?
No.
So if he's the lowest rated player in the class and he's 11th, sorry, missed a 1 there. I was going to say 11th at his position. No, number 111. Okay.
3 ones
answered. All right. Got that. Because sometimes if you see a number that doesn't make sense and then you see, okay, he's a junior college player, that's the reason the ranking doesn't fall in line.
Now let's acknowledge something. These are 2 guys from well outside the state of Iowa. We talked about Iowa's dominance within the borders, but they've done a nice job in Florida. Credit to, I think, Liddell Betts, and I think Kelton Copeland still has some draw down there. And then, of course, with Rashad Godfrey out of Ohio, they've done some good work. And they've pulled him away from a good Big 12 school in Cincinnati from his home state. So I believe he had Cincinnati on his list. Maybe he didn't. Let me look back here. No, Jaylen had Cincinnati on his list. No, Jaylen's the one from Toledo. I get him mixed up. So anyways, they've been really solid within the state of Iowa, but it's good to see him kind of get some success. And they, of course, landed the kid from defensive end from the Phoenix area here recently as well. I think that was primarily a win for LeVar Woods, who I posted a video about yesterday.
Yes, you did. Yeah, I'm just tracking these commitment lists. I find those interesting. The best school on Jaylen Watson's would be Penn State. Got an offer from Penn State, as well as a lot of other solid schools, Power 5 schools.